Trout with the Tennessee Department of Revenue's Taxpayer Education section, and on behalf of our Commissioner, David Geragino, and our staff in Taxpayer Services and the department, we certainly welcome you to today's presentation on the taxation of software in Tennessee. So with me today, we have our main presenter, Miss Katie Julian, who will be going through some information with you in just a few moments. Also on screen here, we have Thomas Meisenzoff from our audit division. So we're glad to have these folks on board. Our Assistant Director in Taxpayer Services, Dan Vincent, is helping us as well today, and we appreciate his assistance. So we're going to learn a lot today. A lot of information is going to be in these slides. The one thing that Katie will probably tell you here in a few moments as we begin this is some of the mechanics of things and our efforts to try to gather as much information about software as we can and put it into a short presentation will be what we're doing today. And of course, this is a very deep subject, but we're going to try to hit the high points and what Tennessee considers to be taxable and non-taxable as it relates to software. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn that over to Katie. And Katie, thank you for being with us, and we'll be right here with you. Thank you.
All right, thanks y'all. Hey everyone, welcome to our free monthly tax webinar. We are doing it a little out of sync with our usual this month. We usually have this tax seminar on the last Tuesday of the month, but this month we're doing it a week early because next week is that lull between Christmas and New Year's. So looks like we've got a lot of attendees in here today, a lot of people interested in computer software. That's great. It's a big topic. We want to call a few things to your attention. There is a PDF that goes along with this PowerPoint, and you can get to it by going to tn.gov/revenue and going to taxpayer education and then tax webinars. There is a link in the chat that I believe Billy put in there. If you just join though and can't access that, the information on the middle of your screen right here that talks about where the recording of today's presentation is going to be, probably later today or tomorrow, that's also where you will find the PDF if you want to go along with this presentation in the PDF, which means you can click on the live links and everything like that. So let's see here. Let's go ahead and get started on our information we're going to give you about taxation of computer software. We are going to be going over today all the laws and definitions, determining taxability of computer software, what is not taxable, the exemptions, and we're going to share some resources. But in a nutshell, access and use of computer software in Tennessee is subject to sales and use tax regardless of a customer's chosen method. You can see the law source there.
The law source is Tennessee Code Annotated Section 67-6-231.
This is a law. Taxation of computer software has, in a roundabout kind of way, been around since the 70s, actually. But as that industry has morphed and progressed and been enhanced, so have our laws regarding computer software. But really, when you break it down, I think you'll find, as we present this information to you, that it's not too complicated. It's mainly just the definitions of computer software. If you're like me and not a very computer savvy person, it's more about understanding the definitions. But I think probably a lot of our attendees today are people that work in the computer software industry, but maybe a lot of third parties, accountants and CPAs, where that lingo may not be as simple to you, but we're going to break it down as much as possible for you in today's presentation. All right, so the basic law regarding computer software says that the retail sale, lease, licensing, or use of computer software in this state, and that includes pre-written and custom computer software, is subject to sales and use tax if provided or delivered via this bullet list here. It can be provided or delivered via remote access to a customer located in Tennessee. It can be delivered on a tangible storage medium like disk. I don't know, does anybody even have disks anymore? I guess so, maybe on big computers. But disks and tapes to a customer in Tennessee by loading and leaving on a customer's or customer's designee's soft computer in Tennessee. or by electronic delivery, which for example is a download, or by programming it into the customer's computer in Tennessee. So you can see there it applies to many different ways. As you're probably aware, the sale of tangible personal property in Tennessee is always subject to sales tax unless there's a specific exemption. The sale of services is typically not unless that service is enumerated in our law or unless that service is part of the sale of the tangible personal property. Well, computer software goes right along with that rule, except for our law specifically says that computer software, even if it's not tangible, even if it's not on a disk, right? So even if it's electronically delivered, our laws have caught up with that, and we're saying that it is subject to sales tax. And I will mention that the tax applies whether the charge for the software is on a per use, per user, per license, subscription, or any other basis. So today we're all joining via WebEx. Well, the state of Tennessee has a WebEx license, actually several licenses for us to be able to present in this way. And for this particular example, Billy and I have licenses so we can host. Thomas, Dan are just panelists joining us, but we have an actual license assigned to us. Trick question here, would that be subject to sales tax? Well, typically yes, but we are a government agency. We'll talk a little bit more about exemptions later, but let's see here. So a definition of computer software is a set of coded instructions designed to cause a computer or automatic data processing equipment to perform a task. And that can include both pre-written and customized computer software. And we're going to break down examples of custom and pre-written software here in just a minute. So we've already mentioned that computer software is subject to tax, and here is what computer software is defined as. All right, we'll talk for a minute here about pre-written software. This is software that is typically designed for use by multiple users, or boxed software. Software including pre-written upgrades, so it does include the upgrades, that is not designed or developed to the specifications of a purchaser. Now that's going to be customized software, which we'll talk about next. Pre-written software can include software that was originally designed as custom, but subsequently sold to a purchaser it was not designed for. It can include pre-written upgrades, as I mentioned, designed to modify or enhance previously purchased software. Or it can include a combination of 2 or more pre-written computer software programs or portions or modules. This is what I like to think of back in the day as going to an office store and buying the actual, you bought a box and it had a disk in there, and that was the software that you would load. It looks a little bit differently these days, doesn't it? Customized software, this one's pretty simple. Basically, it's software that is designed and developed to the specifications of a specific purchaser. Custom software is treated as a service with regards to Tennessee sales tax. All right, this is a big one, remotely accessed software. We also know this as software as a service. It's also known as cloud or internet-based. Providing remotely accessed software as a service includes the access or use of software that remains in the possession of the dealer who provides that software. This has become huge, y'all. It's treated differently in lots of different states. So if you work in this industry, it's important to understand how it's treated. A software as a service model hosts applications on a cloud server and then distributes them to users via the internet or the cloud. Using this model, an independent software vendor can host their application on a third-party cloud provider. Cloud providers can also be software vendors with larger companies like, for example, Microsoft. So typically, software as a service customers pay a monthly subscription fee to access the application, and subscriptions can vary depending on the amount of data to be stored, the level of technical support needed, and number of users. We'll talk a little bit more later about that technical support and stuff like that, but I want to call your attention to an important notice that we have that is specifically about remotely accessed software. If you are in the PDF, which again, you can go to our website, tn.gov/revenue, click on taxpayer education and then tax webinars, and you can click on the PDF there and follow the live link to important notice 1514, which is, it's several pages long. It's a really in-depth important notice specifically relating to remotely accessed software. So if you have the PDF, you will notice that this slide is not in there. I just added it in kind of late in the game here, but I thought it was an interesting stat, and it's software as a service taxability by state. You can see all the states that are in green, that's where software as a service or remotely accessed software is taxable. Blue, it's where software as a service is not taxable. Yellow, it kind of depends on whether it's used by business or personal use. And you can see a couple states there that don't even have sales tax. So
The slide displays a map of the United States titled Software as a Service Taxability by State. On the left side, a key lists 4 color categories. Green indicates taxable, blue indicates non-taxable, yellow-orange indicates states where software as a service is taxed differently depending on business or personal use. White indicates states with no sales tax. Each state on the map is shaded in one of these 4 color categories.
in the last few years, actually post-COVID, we are seeing a lot more remotely accessed software users. Businesses are using it for purposes such as what we're doing right now, right? Or keeping employees in communication with each other. State of Tennessee, Department of Revenue, we use software as a service for how we communicate with our customers. When you send in an email to us, it gets routed as a ticket for us, and we use software as a service for that. Wouldn't surprise me if we start seeing a lot of some of these blue states turning to green in the coming years, since remotely accessed software is becoming a lot more popular. Actually, the laws in Tennessee that specifically address taxability of remotely accessed software, we were kind of ahead of the game. The law addressing that was written in 2015, so it's been taxable here for a few years here. All right, we're going to talk for a minute about sales price and sourcing. And if you're already familiar with sales tax in Tennessee, this really, the sales price is no different than the way everything, the sales price in general of tangible personal property in Tennessee is handled. The sales price is the total amount for which an item is sold. It includes labor and service costs of the seller, as well as charges for services necessary to complete the sale. We're going to kind of detail that services necessary to complete the sale part here in the next few slides as we talk about various services related to computer software. Now, sourcing is kind of interesting. Sales of computer software and taxable services are sourced by whether or not a customer uses or accesses the software from a location in this state. Now, here's what's interesting. If the purchaser has users or employees located in this, both in the state and outside of the state, that access and use the software, the sales price is allocated to claim an exemption for the out-of-state portion. So an example of this, you've got a Tennessee company that has 400 users in state and 200 users out of state. 400 users is going to be divided by the total, which is 600 users, for 66.7%. So that is the amount that would be taxed in Tennessee, would be that 66%. I do want to call your attention to a webinar that we have regarding Nexus for out-of-state businesses. If you're an out-of-state business that's joining us here today, or a third party that deals with those, that's a webinar that I'd like to call to your attention that discusses in more detail about Nexus for out-of-state businesses and hitting that threshold for Nexus. I do want to say the location where remotely accessed software is installed or hosted is immaterial. So if you're, for the software as a service, remote hosting, it doesn't matter where you are, it just matters where those users are in terms of the taxability. We're going to spend a few minutes here talking about software related services. the ones that are taxable. So this, like I said, this is going to go along with, if you're already familiar with how services are taxed in Tennessee, this kind of goes right along with that. Charges for consulting or other services that contribute to creating, designing, developing, fabricating, program, altering, or modifying, that's very common with software, are labor costs that are necessary to complete the sale of the software, and they're going to be subject to tax, even when the service charge is sold separately, itemized, or invoiced by the seller of the computer software. So that goes right in line with other tangible services related to other tangible personal property in Tennessee. Same goes with modifications or enhancements to customized or pre-written software. Those are considered sales of computer software and are going to be subject to sales and use tax. Again, same as with any items that are subject to tax in Tennessee. Modifications or enhancements of those products are also going to be subject to tax. Same goes with installation and repair. That specifically is enumerated by law as being subject to sales tax in Tennessee. Training and configuration. This is, it kind of depends on how this is looked at here. Tennessee does not specifically impose sales tax on training or software configuration, but just like I said before, if these services are necessary to complete the sale of the software or installation, then they're going to be subject to tax. Standalone training or software configurations, so not attached to the sale of the software, if they're provided by a third party and are standalone, they are not going to be subject to sales tax. And you can see on the bottom of this slide here is a definition of what software configuration is. It is a means of setting predefined toggles or switches and or building tables that give direction or define values of parameters that are within the software. So software training or support services that are separately itemized and optional purchases are not part of the sales price. And optional is going to mean that the purchaser is not obligated to make the purchase and has the option to decline to pay for that separately itemized charge, and those would not be subject to tax. All right, this is very common with computer software, maintenance contracts. Lots of information on this slide here, and I'll also call your attention to another important notice 15-25, sales of computer software maintenance contracts. But in a nutshell, we've got the definition of a computer software maintenance contract here. It means a contract that obligates a person to provide a customer with future updates or upgrades to computer software, support services with respect to computer software, or both. Computer software maintenance contracts are subject to sales and use tax in Tennessee, and it applies to computer software installed on computers located in Tennessee. And this is important here. If the location of software covered is not known, the tax is applicable if the purchaser's residential or primary street address is in Tennessee. So the computer software maintenance contract, I will say, does not include telephone or other support services that are optional, like we talked about on the previous slide, and are sold separately and invoiced separately, and do not include any transfer, repair, or maintenance of computer software on the part of the seller. So if a purchaser buys a software maintenance contract in another state and the seller does not collect tax on that purchase, the purchaser will owe use tax. So if you bought that maintenance contract out of state and you're located in state, you would owe use tax on that. All right, so this slide is a nutshell of all of the computer related and software related services that are not going to be taxable. I'm going to just read these out because it's important to understand these, because a lot of software programs pertain to this, but these are the services that are not taxable. Information or data processing services, including the capability of the customer to analyze such information or data provided by the dealer. Payment or transaction processing services, payroll processing services, billing and collection services, internet access services, the storage of data, codes, or software, in converting, managing, and distributing digital products. We do have some special rules about digital items and what's subject to tax as a specified digital product. We actually have a webinar dedicated to that. I don't have the link here, but you can go to our webinar video library. A lot of digital items kind of get lumped in with software sometimes, so it's important to distinguish that, and I would recommend you just going into our webinar video library that's on the webinar page and typing in just the search word digital, and that webinar will come up specifically for you if you want more information on the specified digital products. All right, we're going to talk for a minute about single article application. There's a very distinct difference between pre-written software and the other types of software and services that we've discussed here when it comes to application of single article. Pre-written software is subject to the single article application. Custom software, software maintenance contracts, taxable services, when not bundled, are not. So when single article is applicable, only the first $1,600 of the sales price of that pre-written software is subject to the applicable local tax. An additional state single article tax at the rate of, it's a set rate of 2.75 is due on the amount of the sales price that is between $1,600 and $3,200 of that sales price. And then the entire price is subject to the sales tax rate of 7%. That's about as clear as mud, right? I think we may be the only state that has a single article application. I tried to look into that one time recently, and I couldn't find any other states that do this, but we do have a special webinar dedicated just to single article, and it's not uncommon for that pre-written software to actually hit this single article application mark because of the price point of pre-written software. It can be pretty pricey and fall within the threshold for single article application. Webinar link here if you've got the PDF to our single article webinar. All right. Now we're going to talk about exemptions. I mentioned earlier that Billy and I are both. The state of Tennessee Department of Revenue has purchased a license for each of us to use WebEx and be able to do this. But we probably didn't pay sales tax on that because I'm assuming we probably provided them with our government exemption, right? That's one of the exemptions for computer software. Another is personal. There's a personal exemption. An individual fabricating software for their own personal use is exempt from sales tax. We have an important notice 2205. I was looking at this, reviewing this information this morning that kind of falls within in-house computer software as well. You can find more information about that in that notice that details more about that. A couple years ago, I believe it was in 2022, there was a piece of legislation that also said that an agent of a business or individual that creates that software, it could also be considered exempt from tax. But I would point you to that important notice 2205 for more information about that. Entity based. So we're a government entity. That's why we probably did not pay sales tax on this, on using WebEx, right? There are 13 other different entity based exemptions, such as agricultural exemption, exemption for common carrier, manufacturers. When I was talking to Thomas about this, he said that manufacturing is one of the exemptions he sees often used when it comes to computer software. You can read there the other entity-based exemptions there. Also want to mention resale. If computer software is purchased for the purpose of reselling, access, or use, just like reselling any tangible personal property, a resale certificate may be used to exempt the purchaser from tax. Again, that's only if they're going to be reselling the software. I'm going to share with you here some resources, and I'm going to take you on a little field trip to show you where in the sales and use tax manual you'll find a whole chapter related to computer software. But first, here are some links to some important notices that are current and on our website. Computer software developed for personal use. That was the notice I was just referring to. Sales of computer software maintenance contracts. remotely accessed software direct pay permit. We did not go that in depth in today's webinar in this presentation, but if you want more information on that, it's important notice 1524. And of course, the important notice 1514 that I mentioned previously, remotely accessed software. We have several revenue help articles that are dedicated to computer software, custom software, consulting services, software installed on servers in Tennessee, maintenance contracts, and then the last link you see on there is the whole area that we have within our revenue help section that is dedicated to remotely accessed software or software as a service. So real quick before I move on, I'm going to go over to our website. Let's see. Hopefully y'all can see that. This is tn.gov/revenue, and hopefully you're familiar with all of our manuals. If not, I'm going to show you my favorite place, our tax manuals. You go to tax resources and tax guidance, and then tax manuals right here. I'm going to click on that, and you can see we have lots of different tax manuals.
The speaker navigates to the tax manual's webpage. The page is divided into two sections. On the left is a vertical menu that lists the tax manual categories as clickable links. When a category is selected, its content appears in the main area on the right.
If you're not aware of those already, I would recommend you go and spend some time checking these manuals out. We use them in-house all the time, but I'm specifically going to click on the sales and use tax manual in our current version that was just updated this month, December 2023. Of course, you can access prior versions as well, but we're going to click on the current sales and use tax manual. Just going to briefly scroll down here and show you where you can find lots more in-depth information about this. I believe it's chapter 12. You can see how much information we have. Hopefully I'm not making you dizzy scrolling through here too fast. Here we go. Computer software, chapter 12 in our current manual that starts on page 148, gives you an overview, talks about the sale of software, determining the sales price or purchase price, the services relating to computer software, that single article application that we mentioned, so on and so forth. Specifically, some information about maintenance contracts. We've got about 20 pages in our sales tax manual that is dedicated specifically to computer software. So if you're here today, this topic probably interests you. I highly recommend going into our manual and reading through that. I believe it's about 18 pages or so worth. I can't do the quick math, but specifically about computer software. And you can see there the next chapter in the manual is about specified digital products as well. Keep going and going here. Special section, a special chapter just about warranty and service contracts. So like I said, a lot of information, a lot of taxability of computer software is going to be right in line with the way sales tax is handled in Tennessee in general. So just some specific stuff there for you. Let's see, how do I get out of here? Go back over to the PowerPoint here. And we'll go ahead and turn on the chat right now for you. If you've got any questions for the panel, your chat questions will come directly to all panelists at this point. So put your questions in the chat, if you will. And I'm going to go ahead and also point you over to some more information on how you can follow us, contact us. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, X. See the links here, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can sign up to receive email updates from us on Revenue News. We have a YouTube channel. Of course, our website, which I've shown you, is tn.gov/revenue. But most importantly here, if you have a specific question, we won't dive into a lot of specifics in this webinar, but a question that's very specific to your individual business or a question that you've got, you can email us at revenue.support@tn.gov or call our tax helpline at 615-253-0600. Of course, that's Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. We do have some closures coming up with the holidays. We pretty much follow the bank holidays, so to speak, or just government holidays. We're observing Christmas Eve holiday this Friday, and we'll be observing New Year's Eve the next Friday. But other than that, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, we're here to reply to your emails if you want an answer in writing or want to get through to us that way, or call our tax helpline. So Thomas, Billy, if y'all want to join me here and we can discuss any questions that are coming through on the chat.
Sure. By the way, we're also not here the following Mondays after the holidays.
Oh, right, the actual Christmas Day. And very
Unless
important.
Katie, unless you want to work, Katie, you can work.
I'm not working at all next week.
That's what I thought.
Vacation.
Okay. All right. So, Thomas, did you see anything come up in chat? If you did, shout out. What do you think?
First question that I saw was from Jonathan. He says, so QuickBooks subscription is taxable, but QuickBooks payroll subscription is not. Yes. So payroll services are exempt, or exactly exempt in the law.
Yeah, there we go. Third bullet, right? Payroll
Yes.
processing services.
Somebody asked about direct pay permits. You'd have to apply for a direct pay permit, and they've changed that process just up a little bit. So you'll need to contact.
I'm going to put the link to that important notice in our chat. Give me just a minute to bring that up.
And then there was a question about direct pay permits. You can apply for those on the website, and I think you can access it now on TinTap. But you would have to apply for a permit and be approved to do direct pay, and it's based on a dollar amount and different things like that.
Yeah, this important notice that I'm going to put in the chat actually has a link over to the online remotely access software direct pay permit form. So that is in the chat now.
While we're doing that, one thing hit me during your presentation, Katie, about the excuse me, the differences between the maintenance contracts and the service contracts, and how important it is to possibly consider when you're drawing up your contracts to make sure that if you are contracting for services only, which is non-taxable, then you will leave that separate from the maintenance, because if they're all bundled together, maintenance contracts are taxable, and if you bundle it together, then we're going to have to tax everything. So maybe that's a good tax hint for you.
So a question about what about website design and website development? It's my understanding that the website design and website development fits within the definition of computer software, which again, I'll go back to that slide right here, set of coded instructions. Website design, website development is going to be taxable.
Okay, and for those people that are asking about the PDF, we've posted this numerous times in the chat. I'll do it one more time, but it's going to be, it's on our website right now in the webinar area where you signed up to get the registration link for today's presentation. So one more time, there you go.
I do want to say also regarding website development, if the customer is paying for advertising on someone else's website, then that is not considered creation of software. Just an important note there.
I'm seeing a lot of questions about out-of-state taxability and nexus and different things like that. The big thing that we want to remind you all, the three big points that we look at in audit is, who your customer is, what are they doing with that software, and where are they located? Those are the three big things to think about. Is who are they? Are they listed exempt on the list? And people have asked about that exemption list. You can go on our website and pull up the guides, and you'll see the full list of exempted entities, as well as what are they doing with it? What is the purpose of that software? Is it to just track data? Is it for them to input things? Is it for them to output things? different things like that, and as well as where are they located. If they're in the state of Tennessee, 9 times out of 10, it's probably taxable. If they're out of state, well, then it's probably not taxable. If it's, I saw one about multi-state. If they have headquarters in Tennessee, but they've got locations in all 50 states, then you have to apply the apportionment factor. And I'm not going to get into that, but basically you would just apportion how many licenses or accounts are used in Tennessee. And so computer software can be very cut and dry. Where it gets very tricky is the formality aspect of what the software is, who's using it, and where it's located.
I like the way you break that down. It does it. It really is pretty cut and dry. Just where are they? A big part of it is where is that user located?
Hey, Katie, a good friend Samantha asked, managed service provider, IT service support services. So support services, are these services taxable because we use computer software to manage devices?
Let's see. I'm looking for that
Need
question.
a
We'd
whole
probably need
lot
some more
more
information on that, right?
Yeah,
It was
we'd need,
932.
yeah, we'd need more information on that.
I think the, excuse me, the example that we were using earlier in the presentation about service versus maintenance, you know, to kind of go back over that again, the a service kind of would be like for like training only, you know, or something like that. That would be, that's a non-taxable service, but maintenance would be involving the actual software, making changes to the software, and you know, in that, I think I'm tracking that right. Would you agree with that, Thomas?
Yeah, and you got to look at the ownership aspect of it as well. What do you truly own of the software? I mean, are you just being able to input data into it, or do you have to contact, you know, I've dealt with a lot of other people that have accounting software systems that, you know, they can use them online or they have a software, but they still have to contact the vendor to have them change it. And then they have to pay a fee to have that line item changed or have that line item added. So like I said, it goes, it's pretty cut and dry, but when you get into the case by case situations, what kind of customer service are you providing? Are you just a help desk where if somebody gets locked out, you can log them back in? Are you able to functionality like change the program while you're on the phone with somebody? Those are the things that you have to ask yourself. And the big thing is we will ask for service contract agreements. And it has to be stated out in there what the use of the product is for and what your service agreements cover and what they don't cover, different things like that. Because even for the state, we use computer software. Yes, we're exempt from the state, but we are because we're a state entity, or even federal governments are. But we have programs that we have computer software engineers that are third-party contractors. Well, they're going into our system and changing the system, updating the system, and we also have services where they just unlock our computers if we get locked out. So you have to really drill into who's it for, what's it for, what the purpose is, and who it is. So I'll just keep, a lot of these are really great questions. A lot of these, we'd have to dig deeper into it to kind of understand what you're really asking
Right.
for. And the big
And I'm
thing
not
is
sure.
terminology.
And I'm not sure, Thomas, if you said this or not, but the where part is very important as well, too. You know, as far as it relates to the remotely accessed software or the software as a service, too. That's a big deal. And like Katie mentioned in her presentation, in today's world, it is so much different than it was even like 5 years ago.
Mhm.
The way software is used, the way it's offered to us as consumers, it's incredible. And you know, it sort of staggers us to kind of think about what it might look like 5 years from now. I mean, it'd be unbelievable. So, you know, these laws change. So the legislature changes our laws every single session. You know, in January, our legislature will reconvene, and I'm confident, like every other year that I've been here, there's always a change to sales tax, and oftentimes there's changes in the world of computing and things like that that we have to adapt to. And you know, going back to Katie's map that she had provided, you know, with the other states and things of that nature, there were quite a few states on that map. Um, is is you know, a lot of them just don't tax, you know, in the same way that we do here in Tennessee. So you know, we just want you to know what we do here. Other states might change that in the future too. So you obviously want to check with their departments of revenue and like that too. A couple of you in chat have brought up the thing about the PDF thing not working. I keep posting the link over there. Katie, you want to walk them to the PDF real quick? That would be awesome. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's happening.
I don't know either.
Can you see
Weird.
my web browser?
Yes, we can see your web browser.
Okay, so I'm on tn.gov/revenue. Going to click on taxpayer education and outreach. And then tax webinars, this is where you would have gone to register for today's webinar. And then right here, download participant guide, that's the PDF. So this is the link that we've been pasting in there, and for some reason it's breaking up. So again, from our homepage, tn.gov/revenue, click on taxpayer education and outreach, then tax webinars. You'll see it. That's also where you'll go to register for all of our webinars. Next month, we are doing a webinar on the business tax basics, which was funny. When we sat down to plan out the next 6 months, we realized we had never done a webinar just on the basics of business tax. So we're covering that for you. Then we've got in February, taxation of hemp-based cannabinoids, a new law that passed this past legislative session that addressed that and how we are implementing that, and all about the hemp-based cannabinoids. And then in March, the webinar will be dedicated to the F&E law changes specifically regarding the Tennessee Works Tax Act. We know a lot of you are probably going to be getting your F&E returns ready to do that. So those are our upcoming webinars. This page, if you scroll down, is also where you can get to our webinar video library, which I have mentioned several times in this presentation. You can search here. You can see we've got 54 webinars on our website. So something for everyone there, right?
This will be number 55 starting tomorrow.
That's right. That's right.
Charles Settles has asked us a question about point of sale software. Is point of sale software considered payment processing services for the purpose of exemption of sales and use tax? Is that a good question? And what would be the answer?
It goes back to, Charles, it goes back to what the actual POS system's doing. As an auditor, I've seen POS systems that you're just tracking your inventory and you're logging sales, and it goes through a third party credit card merchant, or Square. You can get into Square, you can get into QuickBooks. It depends on what it is. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on who has the ownership of it. So my biggest recommendation is remember the 3 points. Who's it for? What are you using it for within detail? And where's it located? And if you still have questions, email revenue.support@tn.gov. I highly recommend that, and be as specific as possible. The problem is we get into these general statements of, was POS software taxable? Well, it depends on what it is. It depends on who it is. It depends on what you're using it for. So be as specific as possible. Try to understand exactly what that software does, because then that will better help us determine, yes, this is taxable. No, it's not. Because just saying, hey, is POS software taxable? I can't tell you that answer. It all depends on, what you're doing in it, what you're using it for. So if you reach out to us, like I highly recommend, you can even submit questions on Zendesk, file those out, and be as specific as possible, because some things in the law that are specifically stated that are exempt, and there's some things that aren't, that we have to dig into and understand the terminology of it.
Great point. Great point. And I think in going back to Katie's presentation one more time there, she had put the list of the things that are not taxable because the legislature has determined that those are not taxable services in the state of Tennessee. But if you look at the history of this, like going back to 2015 to that notice that talked about the remote software and things of that nature. And now, what are we? 8 years, almost 9 years into this thing now. Look at how the world has changed. Look at how much more remote software that there actually is. Look how taxable it is. I would say, in my opinion, as a general overview, it seems like the legislature's intent is to tax the software unless there's some specific exemption for it. So I would kind of look at it through that kind of lens as it relates to the general taxation of it, and then go from there. But again, we're welcome to help you walk through whatever situation you have. Just understanding that we are not computer experts, but we can give you the advice that we have in the law and try to help you make a good decision about that. If that makes any sense at all.
Yes, it does, Billy.
And I think one more thing, you really need to understand the sales tax definitions before you can really jump into computer software. Computer software we classify as advanced. When I teach it to our auditors, I just taught it a couple weeks ago again, but if you have questions, you don't understand it, go to that sales and use tax guide first, look up the different definitions, try to understand what the language means, and then ask your questions for computer software.
One more question I want to cover before, I know we're running out of time here, but it's a good question. Let's see, if taxable software has in-state and out-of-state users, we already talked about that, right? Is the total included on line 1 and then the amount used by out-of-state deducted as sales and interstate commerce, or should only the amount sold to Tennessee users be on line 1? This is just like a lot else, everything else we've been talking about. It's treated the same way as other tangible personal property or services in Tennessee. The total is going to be reported on line 1, and then you'll go over to Schedule A and deduct out what is used out of state, the users that are out of state. So that example that I gave you earlier, talking about 400 users were in state, 200 out of state. You're going to do that math there and put the total on line 1 and then exempt out the out of state, or what would be considered interstate sales and interstate commerce over on Schedule A. Well, guys, I think we're running low on time here. If we didn't get to your question, please email us. You can see our email address right there, revenue.support@tn.gov. But just to recap here, both prepackaged and custom software is taxable in Tennessee. Of course, custom software is not going to be subject to the single article application. The location, as Thomas and Billy also really drilled in, the location of the usage of the software is important, but how it's delivered is not relevant. It can be delivered electronically, on a disk, load and leave, remotely. If your company does provide remote software in Tennessee, you're going to only pay Tennessee sales tax for those Tennessee users. The others are going to be sales and interstate commerce. Now you will, as always, need to look into the laws in other states where you have customers to see if you meet nexus and are applicable for charging their sales tax. But as Thomas has mentioned, you really have to dive into the definition of is what you're doing software. And I'll leave you with one last look at that definition of software. Let's see here. That's on slide 5. This is the definition of computer software as far as taxation goes. We thank you for joining us. Thomas, Billy, do y'all have anything else to add, or Dan, anything that you want to address before we sign off here for this month?
I don't, but thank you very much. We appreciate the participation. Sorry for the confusion regarding the PDF there. We'll try to figure out what happened on that, and I apologize for that.
Oh, that's weird.
But at least we walked you to it, and this is where all the information is, and we hope you join us for some presentations in 2024. We'll look forward to providing you with some more guidance there and help you through some different situations that you have in the upcoming new year.
Thomas, as always, we want to thank you for being our special guest. We love hearing from our audit division and really appreciate all your insight and help with this month's webinar.
No problem. I look forward to next year. Business taxes changing, so I recommend going to that. The hemp bill that was passed, that's been a lot of work on our end to play around with that. So
whole new tax.
oh yeah. And then, franchise and excise tax. That's always a headache. I mean, that's always fun to dive into.
No, you said it right. You said it right.
It's recorded, Thomas.
But I look forward to our ones coming up next year. So
absolutely. And for new businesses, we have an upcoming new business workshop, virtual workshop. We offer this quarterly, and it's going to be on January 10th. So join us for that. You can get to that registration site by also clicking on taxpayer education and outreach and then clicking on new business workshops. So join us for that. And as always, thanks again. Please take just a minute to fill out the survey as you're leaving. Give us any ideas you have for future webinar topics. We have catered our topics that we cover a lot recently based on what you're telling us that you want to hear about and want to learn about. So we appreciate you doing that. If you are here if you need CPE credit, you will need to answer yes to question 4 on that little survey that's going to pop up as you exit. And for now, we'll go ahead and sign off and hope you all have a great Christmas and great holiday season, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.